Winemaking's difficult because there are no right answers. It's an infinite number of possibilities and flavors, and it's a craft that will never be mastered. It's a journey. It's not just a product.
Excellent. Welcome everybody to our, I can't believe it, 25th episode of the Wine Stream.
This is the sixth episode.
Sixth episode of the Wine Stream with Palmaz Vineyards. I'm Florencia Palmaz, and joining me every month is my brother Christian Palmaz and sister-in-law Jessica. Hi.
How's it going?
Oh, fantastic. I am so ready to celebrate spring. It's been all things pink and all things green. I just love little baby shoots. This is such a fun time. I wanted to first off thank everybody for the amazing response we've received. You know, we kind of feel like at times we're just out here drinking alone and sort of like sending out good vibes to the world. And then we every once in a while get reminded the amazing response that we have from all of our viewers and our customers, and it's extraordinary. And I'm always surprised by what you guys get really into. So we never anticipated just saying, well, let everyone drink along with us and make an offering of the rosé to drink along with us today, and then sell as much as we did. Jessica, I understand, I mean, you and I were chatting, we have to act literally, we went through the entire online allocation and we have basically run out of wine. We're taking it down from the website after this show. So there's like a few, right? I don't know, you told me you had only a few bottles left allowed to allocate for the online business. So correct me if I'm wrong, we're taking this down, this product down off the website 1 hour after this show. So I hope you enjoyed your order. Enjoy it, savor it. There won't be any more.
And that's it, right? It's not. I mean, they bought all of the online allocation, so that it will not ever come back online. Is that right, Jess?
It won't be on their web anymore. Yeah, that's right.
So enjoy your 2020, because 2021 won't be here till next year.
Yeah.
So
well, this is.
We can't wait to drink along with you all. And as you can see, our ambassador team is online answering questions as we're chatting. And then hopefully, you know, we will check in ourselves and answer any questions live as we're going. But Chris, why don't we kick off with a big cheers to everybody who's got a bottle in their hand and tell us about the 2020 Rosé.
It is a pretty awesome vintage. You know, in terms of the color, Doug, so I'm sure everybody knows, but our assistant winemaker, Doug Mitchell, makes this wine every year. And the 2020, was, we'll pull up the tasting note first, but I like to judge this wine by its color more than anything. And I think they did a really great job. It's an interesting blend. There's 5 Bordeaux, well, is Grenache a Bordeaux varietal? Ooh.
Oh.
Is it? No, it's not. Of course not. So so there's 4 Bordeaux varietals and a lot of Grenache, and it's I love this wine. I think it was really 2020 was kind of a tough vintage, with not so much for us because the winds were in our favor, but there were a lot of fires in 2020. But this vintage it was really perfect in terms of what we expect. Hot in the third and kind of early third quarter and early fourth quarter, but a lot of peaks above 100. But I think that only helped just get ripening done. There was really no reason to fret over this vintage.
Yeah, I mean, all that heat in the late summer really gives you almost that Provençal style. You need it for a good, ripe, gorgeous, just addicting rosé. Also, you're absolutely right. We judge books. We shouldn't be judging our books by our covers, but we definitely judge our rosé by its color. And once again, perfect pale hue. There's no fluorescent Napa bleed look to this rosé. This is really classic Provençal. Doug Mitchell, our assistant winemaker, actually when he graduated, went straight to do a stage in Provence and fell in love with the rosé method of Provence and brought back that expertise with him. So we're always really grateful for his deft touch in this wine. We would almost dare call this the Doug, but it's not such a sexy rosé name. So, Doug, thank you again for the beautiful job. I hope everyone.
The Doug.
The dog. Yeah, exactly. I hope everyone got the wine that they wanted, enjoy it, and save just enough to get you through the summer by the pool, because even though it's so tempting to just drink it all right now, it's going to be delicious all the way through the season. We do make these wines too. This is the only pop and pour we make. So enjoy it, drink it, forget about it. Don't fuss over it. Invent all sorts of reasons every day of the week to drink it. It's really just a fun, it's our fun wine. So cheers to that. We start drinking it in the spring as soon as it's ready to bottle, and we usually finish it by August, and then we miss it until it's back again in the spring. So, so cheers.
It's really well made.
Yeah. Oh, this is the first year it actually smells like pink. Like for me, it smells like strawberries, and it's just it's pink, and it smells pink. So it's just delicious. Well, let's see. Wanted to also give everyone an update. It's been a while since we've talked about what's going on in the cellar. People tend to think of springtime is really an intense time in the vineyard, and it is, and we're going to definitely dig into the weeds of all of that later on in this episode, since cover crop is going to be our feature story. But before that, we actually wanted to share with you the other most exciting thing we do every week for the next almost month and a half is bottling. So we bottle, I think it's every Friday, for almost a month straight, and the bottling line's been ripping through, and the whole winery the full staff is vaccinated and back to work, and really nice to see sort of a hum in level 1 again. So
definitely.
We are bottling, and we also welcome our guests who are now doing indoor tours and are able to visit the cave itself to come on down. And if you happen to be coming on a Friday, you get to see the bottling line run, which is always fun. So, please join us. All the ambassadors are excited to have people in person. As much fun as it's been to be online and visit with everybody virtually, we really prefer to taste wines without webcam lights. So come on down in person. We can't wait to see you. Let's see. I think that's all we have kind of on the business side of things. Can we get into the weeds?
There's one little thing we also did, which was we just, springtime is release the whites time, right?
Yeah.
So the 19 whites are they headed out, Jess? Are they already in people's hands or soon to be?
Yeah, so club members, most of our club members have it, or will have it really soon. And then we're in the middle of the allocation period right now.
Yeah. So for anyone who has friends who are not necessarily club members and are interested in buying our wines a la carte, this is the time of year that we know that you will have it available and able to ship to you. And as you know, all of our whites are sort of our other favorite toys, named after the 3 women of the family. So my mother is Amalia, the Amalia Chardonnay, the Jessica Louise Riesling, her middle name is Louise, and then of course the Florencia Muscat. So it's a beautiful vintage. It's a great lineup and a release. We're very pleased with the quality of the wine on all 3 wines. And to consolidate the allocation, we are doing all 3 wines at once. So to maximize your shipping, this is a great chance to get all the white wines in one package and reduce that per bottle shipping expense to everybody. So,
and we should have a little bit more than what we did with the rosé, and won't sell out in 3 days. To the wine stream viewers alone.
Yes, absolutely. So let's see, we've got weeds. Our favorite second crop, and so overlooked in wine. We always tend to talk about grapes. It's grapes, and then of course turning it into wines, which is really what everyone wants to always talk about and cover. But as Chris can tell you, actually sometimes more impactful to the quality of a single parcel is what we end up planting and focusing on as our second crop, and definitely not second place in importance, the cover crop. So springtime for us is all about growing and studying the cover crop. So we wanted to give you guys, sort of the technical dirt, sort of Palmaz style on what we have going on in the vineyard. And so we thought we would do a good deep dive. And if you're a gardener, stay tuned. We're going to actually tell you what are the plants that would be helpful in your gardening that we use as cover crop in ours.
That's right.
So Chris, tell us why cover crops? So everyone asks, it's like, why are we so obsessed with the weeds?
Well, the thing about the cover crop is that it is our form of fertilizer, right? So, there's lots of different types of fertilizers, as many gardeners know. And the thing with using sort of or processed fertilizers is that they tend to have a good ability to sort of fix the soil. And we kind of think of them as more like when you create a new vineyard and you want to have you want to add the balance. And, for example, in a lot of our vineyards, when we're talking about what's needed between the rows, a lot of it's because of what we're concerned about, the soil providing then the vines for that entire growing season. And not just the nutrients that are required, but also the soil texture and avoiding erosion. So the cover crop does a lot. And 66% of the area of a vineyard, in our case, is cover crop. So it's actually more cover crop than vineyard, and this is why we put so much effort into them. And so a lot of times, when you look at cover crops and you think about, you've all noticed sort of the staggered look to them. So when you kind of look out across the cover crop and you notice, for example, you'll have sort of one row that's planted, one row that is not. It's actually because one is called the permanent cover crop, and then one is called the actual cover crop itself that is planted, then mowed, and then spaded or cultivated into the soil. And then we'll oftentimes rotate that. So from one year to the next, one will be the permanent cover crop, and the other one will be the cultivated cover crop. And we do that on purpose to actually give the soil rest, so we don't overwork the soil. And also to distribute the nutrients evenly across the field. Now, the big challenge is choosing what cover crop to plant. And every vineyard, just like, we've always said that, high-tech farming is not farming the group to grow as an individual, but rather grow the individual to grow as a group. The cover crops are the same. So just like we have sort of technology and tools to help us irrigate exactly what every vine needs, we also have technology and tools to help us decide where to plant the right cover crop in each parcel, depending on the needs of that vine or that clone, and ultimately that rootstock that's planted in the ground. So one of the tools that we developed, as we've discussed on the show before, is called Vigor. Now, Vigor originally was developed for soil hydrology measurements, right? And just kind of a recap how Vigor works. It's a plane, right? They put a little plane in the sky, a little Cessna 182, the belly camera system on it, and it shoots this picture of the vines at about
the model of the plane. I just love that.
Well, it's a good plane because it's inexpensive and it sips fuel, but only 18 gallons an hour. So it goes up there and it's about 8,000 feet. We take this picture and we take it from the same spot as close as we can twice a week, every Monday, roughly every Thursday of the growing season. And what we're doing is we're isolating every parcel. So we're taking the parcel, we're breaking it into its thermal, its infrared, and then we're combining that to make something called an NDVI. And the NDVI tells you, this normalized difference vegetation index, tells you how even are all the vines growing. And what we typically use this for is we measure the soil type, or we measure the soil hydrology in a couple locations. We want to measure, what the soil moisture is at different depths of the soil. And we'll take that detail and essentially we'll then ask Vigor to tell us, hey, well, how much water would we need to put in every part of the field to sort of normalize its growth, right? So that the next week essentially tells you how much water you should put down in the field. And then we do it. And then we take a picture again. We keep doing this over and over again. And over the course of a growing season, if you keep doing this, you should get an improvement. Now, if you actually do this not just for water, but you actually do it for soil nutrients, you can actually derive some interesting ideas about maybe how the vineyard is consuming its available nutrients. And really, ultimately, at the end of the growing season, are you ending up with too much, say, nitrates or certain nutrients that the vine needs? Is there an excess of it, or is there not enough? And
can I interject one thing?
Yeah.
There's one little piece of advice that I got early in my career that I always appreciated. Mia Klein actually pointed this out to me. People tend to forget that in the grape wine grape growing business, we are in fact suppressing the vigor of the vine. We don't want big, huge, gorgeous, biggest grapes we could find in a supermarket style grapes. We want teeny tiny grapes. So in fact, what we are is oftentimes wanting less nutrients, not more, less water, not more. So a lot of the technology is really, it's helping us be really stingy farmers with that. And then how far can we go without killing the plant? That's something that is not very intuitive to a normal, agriculturalist or gardener at home. Usually if you're trying to get really big, gorgeous pumpkins, for instance, you're going to throw as much nutrients at it and, baby it and give as much water as you can. In the grape industry, to make beautiful tasting wines, we want absolutely the opposite. So when Chris is talking about testing for nutrients, in fact, we're looking sometimes for less, not more, and then just the right amount or just a little bit of the right kinds. So, sorry.
No, that's exactly what it is. And so the problem, though, is that every rootstock, every soil type is going to need essentially a totally different package. You used to, a long time ago, the industry used to have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to cover crops, and you would just, plant a farmer's mix or something would go out. And it didn't matter what was planted; that was good enough to hold the soil during the winter, gave enough nutrients. But then, as things got more advanced and our technology got more advanced, we started realizing that different soil types with different rootstocks, with different growing patterns and plans and microclimates and everything all together, you need totally different approaches. And that's what Vigor helped us do. Is I basically identify and produce a plan of where in the vineyard to plant certain cover crops. And not only that, but look at even within a parcel. And so decisions started getting made on each of these locations. You can see there's a lot of variation and across these kinds of studies, and to help us really begin to understand what exactly is needed. Now, the real challenge part is figuring out what is the blend or the species that you're actually going to put down in the ground and grow. And add to all of that, another element to this, which is the insect population. So this is an incredible, it's a science in itself, but you're basically, since we don't use insecticides, you're basically creating the habitat for all the predatorial insects to be able to grow and thrive so that they can go take care of the insects that you don't necessarily want hanging around the vineyard. And believe it or not, they're way, way more effective than spraying a broad spectrum insecticide. And so it's a complete science into itself. Florencia is actually, she's definitely the kind of the cover crop nerd in the family. So she's broken down, kind of picked some, I don't know, like your top dozen favorites and what they do.
My top picks when I hike in the vineyard, like the individual plants that I just think do really cool things and I'd love to share about. So yes, it's sort of my garden nerd in me. I went to the vineyard on Sunday, and Sunday for me is a sacred day where I really spend time hiking the rows and get to know how the vineyard and the progress is. Because as much as all this technology that Chris is talking about is, and it's amazing to do generalized overviews, it does not replace the most important things, which is boots on the ground, hiking up and down the rows, and really seeing for yourself. Because these NDVIs, they're incredibly valuable to do only one of the three major cover crops decisions, which is nutrients. The other two is habitat, like we're talking about insect populations. And then the third one is soil texture. There's no machine out there yet that can tell us the texture of the soil. So, other than literally looking at it, rubbing it in between your fingers and really seeing how it feels underfoot, walking is really the only way to really get a feel for that. And there's actually cover crops that help us do soil texture. So Chris, I took some pictures on Sunday. I uploaded them to him, and we started playing the pick that root game. So,
I'm going to do my best here, but I don't remember all the names of everything. So I'll try and do my best. But maybe can you help us just kind of from a broad strokes level?
Sure.
What is the kind of cover crops, like say, for example, if you just need a soil stabilizer, but if you actually need to put nutrients, what are the go-tos there?
Right. So broad. Let's say sort of broad, like you said, a broad stroke. If we're looking for things that need to really increase nitrogen in the soil because it is in fact depleted past where we want it to be, then we're going to go for the legumes and those that are nitrogen fixers, where there's a lot of really good dense green matter. And and the way that so it fixes a lot of nitrogen in the soil through the roots, but then also it's actually storing it in the plant itself, in the stalks and in the leaves. And generally, before we get to the point of actually creating pea pods, that's the time in which we will mow and spade into the soil so that all of that good, nice, green, lush matter will actually decompose into the soil. So, the legumes are really great for nitrogen fixing. We have two different kinds of legumes. We actually have the fava bean, which is the tall, really thick stalk. It's a very aggressive nitrogen fixer. And we use a field fava. And then we have the field pea, the sweet pea. So we'll see, the cute little, so there's a field fava there. And you can see it just flowering. That's kind of just prior to the perfect point of spading it under to be able to get all that really good nitrogen back into the soil. And you can actually see it's mixed there in that photo with grass. So oftentimes we'll pair it with grass. The grass is very good for stabilizing the soil during the winter months. More specifically, we'll pick ryegrass, or I think it's also called, I knew I was going to flub this one. It's actually a non-proliferating ryegrass. So we
But you also have clover, right? So then there's some clover mixed in, I've noticed.
Correct. Clover you'll also see oftentimes in with the grasses. Clover is actually more common used in the permanent crop. It's really nice to walk underfoot. It doesn't grow very tall. Clover also has the advantage of not being a big harborage for bugs. So as you can imagine, we're totally great about having a total party of bugs during the winter season when the vines are dormant. But once those young shoots start sprouting, we start getting really picky about what kind of bugs are going to be in the vineyard. So that's always the time of year when we start mowing and we start spading under the taller cover crops to make sure that we're suppressing the activity of insects in the crop zone. And then we will leave those short, long, clover style, really low growing in between the alternate rows because it's easier for us to physically walk in. So you can imagine we walk through the vineyard almost 30 times in the growing season, way easier to walk through a beautiful little cover crop of a permanent crop, like we call it, instead of having to trudge through freshly trodden, freshly tilled soil. Let's see, my other favorites are what we call biodrills. So white turnips and daikon radishes will grow, and that's generally and there's a perfect example. I pulled that one up myself on Sunday just to prove the point that yes, white radishes are great biodrills because it's literally drilling down into the soil. That's about 6 inches long. And a totally unimpressive weed from the top, and then you open it up and it's this glorious white radish. Same thing with daikon radish. We do not actually let our daikon radish grow to full length. So, I don't know if you've ever seen daikon in a garden. It can be 2 feet, 3 feet long. We're not letting it get that far. We just need to get a little bit of a biodrill. And what that really does a great job of is loosening up the soil from any kind of compaction. So those lower vineyards that tend to have a lot of tractor work in them, every couple of years, we're going to want to go through, if we start seeing the soil get a little tight, we'll definitely throw a large seed mix of radishes and daikons in there and help loosen up that soil. And
I've noticed that it's really important for you guys when we do we go through and we mow, that we come very quickly, come right back over it. And I've noticed you know, and this, Flo, describe what the spader does. It's not really like a typical cultivating machine.
You know, that's so true. The spader is in fact, what they call the cloven hoof spader. So, so like what Chris was saying, so we want to mow and then not let it rest for more than 3 days before we'll actually spade it under. And what that does is it cuts the grass, and then all that nice soft green material will literally, with a spade that looks like a small lamb or goat's foot, literally go in and spade them under. So it gives a very natural, very even, not too aggressive spading, because as you can imagine, for long-term sustainability, we need this vineyard to last our children's generation. So erosion control is always the highest order of priority when it comes to all of our farming philosophies. And so we want really gentle spadings, things that won't disturb the soil too much and will help reintegrate all of that mulch material nicely into the soil and let it decompose. And also, the additional thing that does is it really helps boost the biodiversity inside the soil. So sometimes, you know, many times we talk about biodiversity in the insect population up in the air, and then we talk about biodiversity inside the soil. Soil needs to have two things. It needs to have rest periods, and it also needs to be protected from the sun. So that's another thing, yet again, that you'll see cover crops do a really great job of, is sort of sun protection. And in the early winter months, before the seeds, you know, we plant all these seeds and they have a few months before they really start sprouting, we'll in fact protect them from the sun and from erosion by throwing out winter hay. So it's one of actually the cutest things that you see us do, is we'll flake hay up and down the rows. And Chris, I don't know if you have any pictures. I know I'm throwing you a curveball. Don't show me a picture of spring. Show me a picture of winter. See how fast we can find that. It does a great thing, and this is one of the most basic. If you're a gardener out there and you're trying to get your you know, your summer garden going, and you've got young starts right now, I definitely encourage you, in between your spacings of your plants, throw some hay down. It's always good to throw a little bit of hay down, stabilize your soil, and protect it from getting sunburned. It's a real thing. It's not sunburned like they get a tan, but rather you're killing the microbes in the top 2 inches of the soil, which are oftentimes really the barrier to protecting all the nutrients that you're working so hard to cultivate down below. So sorry, you can tell I get way nerdy about dirt. It's just my favorite subject in the vineyard. I've always been the gardener in the family.
Well, not only that, I've seen you go into the cover crop to actually make a salad before too.
Yes.
So
just before they start mowing and spading, I do one of my favorite things that I love to do every year, which is in fact make cover crop salad, which is I love to harvest the baby field peas, the baby radishes. I'll pull mustard greens and make a really beautiful spring mix. Oh, with actually one more very popular California wild green that is a wonderful stabilizer, is a nasturtium. I don't know if you can find that, Chris. You'll see these all over the place if you happen to live in California or here on the West Coast. This little plant is an absolutely delicious green and very nutritious. Sometimes it has a little yellow or orange flowering on it. Next time you run across these, pull it up, pop it in your mouth. They are like the most delicate version of a watercress that you can possibly imagine. And then,
so,
yes.
If, you know, one thing I think a lot of people who come to Napa Valley are, you know, kind of the quintessential Napa Valley cover crop is mustard. So why? So I you know, I'm going to ask the question because I'm sure someone's thinking it. Why don't we use more mustard? And we use it. We have plenty of vineyards that have, you know, row after row of very, very yellow, beautiful flowers. But why don't you see more of this in our vineyard? And you know,
it's so true. It's so beautiful, and I wish it had as much nutritional value as it had visual value. It's the most impactful. Napa Valley tourism wouldn't be the same without it. People literally fly, you know, drive out in droves and take pictures of their children in the middle of the mustard seed rows. And I always laugh a little bit to myself because, in fact, one of the primary roles of mustard in a vineyard is to be a nutrition suppressant. It's one of those that loves to pick up nutrients and pull it away. Generally, you'll see mustard in lowland, flat areas, not so much up in the benchlands like us. And what they're trying to do is, in fact, devigorize the vineyard in the summertime, because that vineyard will probably have, several feet of really mulchy, overly nutritious soil that would then just give you, big vigorous vines that don't like to focus on fruit quality. The other thing that you'll also see, if you need to devigorate a vineyard, or this also happens a lot in the deep south, if you need to devigorate a garden bed because it's just got too much nitrogen or too much phosphorus, planting common vetch, which I'm not sure you're going to find that picture, Chris, but it happens to be a really pretty little flower.
Here's your quintessential mustard Napa Valley.
There you go.
Valley floor cover crop.
Yeah, flat land and yellow as far as the eye can see. And really what they're trying to do, the secret behind that is trying to devigorate that soil and make it a little bit more, a little bit less loamy, basically. And the other thing that I see when I see this picture, I look at that and I start cringing. I start getting really nervous about bud break, because as you can see, all those flowers are up in what we call the fruit zone, right? So they're parallel to the places where the vines begin to sprout, and very pretty to look at, but it's literally building an entire insect biome right next to what insects consider candy, which is those really delicate buds that we actually want to be protecting. So oftentimes you'll find more conscientious vintners and the people who are more on top of the timing of their vineyard will be very focused on mowing down and tilling over that cover crop prior to having young shoots growing, just like those.
Well, and also because of frost, right? So it's incredible, those 2 feet in the frost difference when these little shoots are coming out, and they're so susceptible to frost damage. Like, we can have very cold nights. That inversion layering, very dense cold air, when the cover crops are really high, it doesn't let that air sit, down in between the rows where the wind machines can blow it out and kind of move it around. So there's a bit of a battle between the vineyard, who wants to get the rows cleared out, and the horticultural, the soil team, who wants to get the most nutrient value out of the cover crop. They want to grow a little bit longer. So it's always a bit of a battle on when we should mow, when we should spade.
Yeah. It's so true. It's also why there's no wrong answers, honestly. Every vineyard location, every winemaker, every viticulturalist is going to have a different set of priorities for every piece of land. And it's part of the reason why we have a different cover crop seed mix for every parcel. Because, for instance, in one area in which, theoretically would be a very vigorous area that doesn't have frost susceptibility, we'd go ahead and put a mustard and go ahead and put a lot of common vetch, maybe devigorate that vineyard, enjoy some more intensity out of the fruit, because we're not so nervous. There we go. That's common vetch.
Well, I noticed this video you took.
Side thing on common vetch, yeah, this is all as cover crop of common vetch, is the plant that oftentimes get planted in mass quantities on the sides of highways when there are chemical spills, because it's literally like a chemical sponge. So you'll see that being used by big industrial complexes who need to sort of clean up or rehab places that perhaps were abused by either a chemical spill or an imbalance as a result of some major industrial movement. Common vetch is oftentimes their, sort of the Dawn soap for people who are trying to clean up dry land. If you remember the ExxonMobil, in the ducts. Sorry, my random thoughts on plants. It's a weird episode. We're deep in the weeds, I promised.
Well, the other thing I was kind of surprised by is how much diversity there is in these. How do you know how many different species or seeds it will be in some of these mixes?
Well, the mixes are actually, I think your smallest mix has got about 6 seeds. You've got another mix that's got 11 seeds. And of course, that's just the seeds we're planting. But because we don't use pesticides in the vineyard, we also are intermixing with really all the plants that would natively grow. And we welcome those native growing plants because they're there for a reason. So we would never try to eradicate something just to make room for our seeds. We sort of want everyone to cohabitate together and create sort of selective pressure when we really need it. So yeah, that's a beautiful image of that's actually a permanent cover crop that's got, a combination of clover and, oh gosh, that little orange flower I'm forgetting right now. I apologize. I don't have every plant memorized. I'm not that good.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about. We have a lot of that mix, so even sometimes outside the vineyard, just as a kind of a soil stabilizer, like a permanent cover crop. And yeah, it's a pretty flower.
Yeah. Well, it's really fantastic. I mean, if anyone has any questions and are interested, we're happy to share with you all sort of what our seed mixes are. They are unfortunately only available for professional agriculturalists, so it's not something that I could share easily. But at least being able to identify, and send you to a nursery that does do common mixes. Look for them in your nursery. They're worth it. I've been a huge fan of both, covering and hay and using spraying seed mixes in my vegetable garden, and have seen great success. Organic farmers, to a certain extent, have really got it going on when they look to create better biodiversity, more sustainable, and even like healthier and hardier, less susceptible to the weather when you've got a really great diversity in all of your crops. So.
There is actually a little bit of a reference on the blog. There's a section on the blog called Science of Wine, and Flo, you took the time a couple of years ago to write a 2-part blog article about cover crop. And if you're really, really interested, you took the time to photograph and actually name a lot of the different from like daikon radish. Anyways, it's pretty cool. I'll put a link in the chat if anyone's really, really interested.
Okay.
So.
I will spare you all. I'm also feel embarrassed, like I've exposed myself sort of one of my little nerdy little side passions in the vineyard. But thank you for indulging me and joining us for this. It's been a real pleasure to have you all join us, and like I said, get into the weeds of what we love to do in the springtime. In the meantime, let's see, we've got the month of May coming up. And May for us is essentially Mother's Day's month. So as you all know, Mom is our matriarch and very much our leader in the winery. We're incredibly grateful to her leadership and her vision. We wouldn't be doing what we do today if it wasn't for our mother, Amalia. And as a result, we always release her wine in and around the month of May. And so we thought, what better theme for May, for next month's wine stream? We're definitely going to feature Chardonnay, and hopefully Mom is preliminarily accepted to come on, so we will have Mom back. She is our most glamorous.
She's on.
Awesome.
and she's agreed to do a vertical. So so the 15, Jess, tell us, the status on the 15 was gone. I mean, I noticed it's been sold out on the website for over a year now. So tell us what you're doing for the viewers.
Yeah, well, we wanted to, and recently kind of just be looking at how some of these older vintages of white wines especially, have aged. And so some of these that were put away as a small amount in the cellar to just kind of keep an eye on them, and then bring them out specifically for, events like this. So there's very little available, but we are going to, bring a little bit of it back out for us to do that vertical with.
Cool.
Yeah,
so it's a 3
vertical, and we're challenging to also share on the show her 3 favorite pairings with her Chardonnay. So many of you know, the cookbook that I wrote about 5 years ago was really actually an anthology of my mother's cooking. I don't take a lot of credit for the food itself. I just did the documentation and the photography and sort of the production of it. But she is an amazing hostess. I mean, bar none, best party giver I've known all my life, and a ton of fun, incredibly glamorous. And she's really just a whole history and lifetime of great, just epic dinner parties and really beautiful pairings. We started the Chardonnay primarily because she was literally saying, I'm bored of always having to serve beef. So we're putting her to the test and asking her to share with us her 3 favorite pairings with our 3 most recent vertical vintages. And we will be able to taste the 3 wines. And of course, we'll be happy to share with you the recipes of all the food. And we'll hopefully get that photographed and get ready to share that with you next month. But in the meantime, feel free to buy the wines, taste along with us, and we look forward to seeing you all next month on the wine stream.
Awesome.
So,
cheers,
as
everybody.
always, yes,
Yeah.
a pleasure. Thank you. Cheers, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.